The TGR-47 was a joke. That's what the Galactic Union had intended it to be, at least. The humans were the newest species to join the Union, and while their ingenuity and stubbornness had been noted, their technology was laughably primitive compared to the likes of the Xenthar, the Vrogan, or the Solari. The humans had barely made it past their own solar system when the Union accepted them, and the only reason they were granted a military vessel at all was because of some bureaucratic technicality. The ship they were given wasn't just outdated, it was scrap. The TGR-47 was a decommissioned battleship that had been scavenged for parts long before it was ever handed over. The hull was riddled with patchwork repairs from a dozen different Union species, the engines sputtered when pushed past half power, and the primary reactor core was so old that even the engineers who designed it had been dead for centuries. Captain Elias Carter stepped aboard and felt the ship groan beneath his boots. He ran his hand along the nearest bulkhead, noting how the metal was warped from years of stress. The overhead lights flickered at random intervals, and the control panels along the bridge were barely holding together. "This thing's a flying coffin," muttered Lieutenant Aaron Wrench Kowalski, his chief engineer. She kicked a loose panel which promptly fell off, exposing a tangle of mismatched wires. "They're laughing at us, Cap." Carter smirked. "Then let's make them choke on that laughter." The humans had a reputation in the Union already. They were known for their reckless creativity, their ability to make do with whatever they had, and their absolute refusal to back down from a challenge. The Union had given them scrap, but to humans, scrap was just potential waiting to be realized. The first problem was the reactor. The TGR-47's core was an outdated fission model, barely capable of keeping the ship's life support running. Kowalski and her team got to work immediately, ripping out the old core and replacing it with something they weren't exactly supposed to have: a high subset of plasma reactors salvaged from a derelict Union destroyer. Technically, they hadn't stolen it. The wreck had been abandoned for years, floating in deep space, and no one had bothered to claim it. But the humans had a saying: finders, keepers. Once the new reactor was installed, the ship had power. A lot of power. More than it was designed to handle. Next, they tackled the shields. The deflector array that came with the TGR-47 was useless, barely strong enough to deflect space debris. They ripped it out and replaced it with something experimental. Something the Solari had been working on but hadn't yet perfected. It was a modular energy matrix that absorbed incoming fire instead of just blocking it, redirecting the energy into the ship's systems. Then came the weapons. The original armament consisted of a pair of outdated pulse cannons, little more than an insult in modern warfare. Carter and his crew weren't having that. They salvaged twin railguns from a classified Union research lab, along with an array of plasma turrets and a gravity lance prototype that technically didn't exist on any official records. By the time they were finished, the TGR-47 was more machine than ship. The Rust Bucket, as the crew affectionately called it, had become the most dangerous warship in the galaxy, and no one outside the crew even knew it yet. The Union barely paid attention to their modifications. The humans were a minor species, an afterthought in galactic politics. So when a Xenthar warfleet attacked a Union outpost on the fringes of civilized space, no one thought to call the TGR-47 for help. That was their first mistake. The Xenthar were a warrior race, ruthless and efficient. Their fleets were designed for destruction, their tactics built on overwhelming firepower. They didn't take prisoners. The Union outpost they attacked was lightly defended, its garrison fleet nothing more than a handful of corvettes and a single outdated cruiser. The distress call went out, but the Union command hesitated. Deploying a full fleet to repel the Xenthar would risk escalating the conflict. By the time the bureaucrats finished debating, the outpost would already be ash. Carter didn't wait for orders. The moment he heard the distress call, he turned to his crew. "Prep the jump," he said. "We're going in." Kowalski blinked. "Cap, you realize this thing's held together with duct tape and spite, right?" Carter grinned. "Exactly. And we've got more spite than they have firepower." The TGR-47 tore through space, its newly overhauled engines burning brighter than they ever had. It dropped out of warp near the besieged outpost, its arrival barely registering on the Zenthar fleet's sensors. The enemy warlord, seated on the bridge of his flagship, sneered as he looked at the incoming vessel. "Owen's ship?" he scoffed. "And it's that thing?" He barked a laugh. "Burn it!" The Zenthar fleet opened fire. Plasma bolts and kinetic slugs streaked through the void, closing in on the TGR-47, and vanished. The ship's modular shield array absorbed the energy, redirecting it into the railguns. The humans fired back. A single shot punched through the Zenthar flagship's hull like it was made of paper. The round tore through multiple decks before hitting the reactor core, igniting a chain reaction that vaporized the entire ship. The rest of the Zenthar fleet hesitated. This wasn't supposed to happen. The TGR-47 didn't hesitate. Its newly installed missile bays lit up the void with trails of fire, striking down Zenthar corvettes before they could regroup. Plasma turrets tracked and eliminated incoming strike craft, while the gravity lance cut a Zenthar cruiser in half with a single shot. The battle was over in less than 30 minutes. The Zenthar, the most feared warriors in the Union, retreated in panic. And the Union? They watched. Long-range sensors had captured everything. The bureaucrats, the admirals, the politicians. Every single one of them had just witnessed something impossible. The humans had taken scrap a useless, broken warship that should have been forgotten. Turned it into the most dangerous ship in the galaxy. The aftermath of the battle left the crew of the TGR-47 running on adrenaline. The smell of ozone and heated metal filled the bridge as alarms blared from overstressed systems. The ship groaned as power fluctuated, struggling to keep up with the sheer amount of energy it had redirected during the fight. Kowalski swore as she pulled up damage reports on her console, her fingers flying across the controls. "Core's running hotter than a goddamn sun, Captain," she called out. "If we don't regulate output soon, we're going to be making our own little supernova out here." Carter wiped the sweat from his brow and glanced at the main view screen. The Zenthar were in full retreat, their warships scattering into the void like panicked animals. The outpost, battered but intact, hung in space behind them, emergency beacons flashing. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken on an entire Zenthar battle fleet with one ship, a ship that, according to the Galactic Union, shouldn't have been capable of more than floating. "Divert excess power into the auxiliary capacitors," Carter ordered. "And for God's sake, shut off those alarms before they give me a migraine." The bridge crew snapped into action. The alarms died down, replaced by the hum of overworked machinery. Kowalski muttered something under her breath as she rerouted power. The rust bucket was holding together, but barely. They had pushed the ship beyond its limits, and now it was a race against time to stabilize it before they tore themselves apart. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Union fleet," said Ensign Patel, looking up from her comm station. "They just arrived in system." Carter smirked. "Of course they show up after we do all the work, patch them through." The main view screen flickered, and the face of Admiral Vec Lore of the Galactic Union filled the display. His reptilian features were impassive, but Carter could see the disbelief in his slit-pupiled eyes. The Union had expected the outposts to fall. They had expected the humans to be powerless. Instead, the TGR-47 had just rewritten the rules of warfare. "Captain Carter," the Admiral said slowly, his voice heavy with restrained emotion, "your actions were unexpected." Carter leaned back in his chair, casual. "You're welcome." Veclaw's jaw tightened. "You acted without authorization, engaged a superior enemy force without support, and risked a diplomatic incident with the Zenthar Dominion. And we saved the outpost," Carter pointed out. "You're welcome. Again?" The Admiral's nostrils flared. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Carter exchanged glances with Kowalski, who was grinning behind her console. "Yeah," he said. "We just showed the whole damn galaxy that humans aren't a joke." There was a long silence. The Union had never taken humanity seriously. Even after their induction, they were seen as little more than a curiosity, a primitive species lucky enough to stumble into the stars. Now, the entire Galactic Union had just watched them annihilate an elite war fleet with a piece of junk. Veclor exhaled through his nostrils, his scales bristling slightly. We will discuss this at length when you return. For now, you are to remain in system until further notice. Carter gave a mock salute. Looking forward to it, Admiral. The screen went dark. The moment the transmission ended, Kowalski let out a laugh. Did you see his face? I thought his eyeballs were going to pop out of his skull. Yeah, laugh it up, Carter said, standing. We just made a whole lot of enemies today. The Zenthar won't forget this, and I doubt the Union's going to be too happy about us making them look incompetent. Kowalski sobered slightly. So, what now? Carter looked around at his crew. These people had done the impossible. They had turned a broken wreck into a legend. He wasn't about to let some politicians or alien bureaucrats dictate their future. We do what humans do best, he said. We get ready for the next fight. The repairs took days. The battle had pushed the TGR-47 beyond its limits, and the crew worked around the clock to patch it back together. The reactor had been running in the red for too long, forcing Kowalski and her engineers to manually recalibrate the output to prevent an overload. The railguns needed new ammunition coils, the shield array had been burned out from overuse, and half the ship's automated targeting systems were fried. But even with all the damage, the ship had proven itself. Word spread fast. Across the Galactic Union, whispers of the battle reached every corner of space. The Zenthar had been humiliated, an entire war fleet shattered by a single ship. The Rust Bucket had become a legend overnight. And legends had a way of attracting attention. A week after the battle, while Carter and his crew were still repairing the ship, a Union diplomatic vessel arrived in Severus. The crew expected another dressing down from Union Command, but when the delegation stepped aboard, it wasn't just bureaucrats and admirals. It was aliens they had never seen before. Carter met them in the hangar bay, arms crossed as the delegation stepped onto his ship. The lead figure was tall, clad in a flowing black coat lined with golden embroidery. His skin was a dark shade of blue, his eyes solid black orbs that reflected no light. His species wasn't one Carter recognized. Captain Elias Carter, the alien said, his voice smooth and calculated. I am Representative Ketal of the Free Star Syndicate. Carter raised an eyebrow. Never heard of you. Ketal smiled. I suspect you will soon. We represent certain independent interests across the galaxy, and we have been watching humanity with great curiosity. Aha, Carter said. And what does the Free Stars Syndicate want with my ship? Ketal's black eyes gleamed. To offer you a choice. Carter glanced at Kowalski, who looked just as intrigued as he was. I'm listening. You have made waves, Captain, Ketal said. The Union dismissed you, yet you humiliated the Zenthar. You have turned a forgotten relic into the most feared warship in the galaxy. And now you find yourself at a crossroads. Ketal stepped forward, lowering his voice slightly. The Union will never truly respect you. They fear what you have done. They fear what humanity may become. And the Zenthar? They will never forgive you. They will come for you, sooner or later. Carter tensed. He had already been thinking the same thing. The Zenthar wouldn't just let this defeat go unanswered. And the Union? They were too concerned with politics to do anything that might upset the balance of power. What are you suggesting? Carter asked. Ketal smiled again. That you step outside the Union's chains. The Free Star Syndicate is not bound by their laws, their treaties, or their limitations. We reward those who prove themselves. And you, Captain, have proven yourself beyond all expectations. Carter considered his words carefully. There was no denying that the Union had never truly cared about humanity's potential. They had given them a garbage ship out of pity, never expecting them to do anything with it. And the moment humanity proved them wrong, they tried to contain them. "You want us to work for you?" Carter asked. "Not for us," Catal corrected. "With us. The Syndicate values strength, ingenuity, and those willing to break the rules when necessary. You have already done so. We offer you the chance to keep doing it. On your own terms." Carter felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. The Union wanted to keep them under control. The Zenthar wanted them dead. And the Freestar Syndicate, they were offering something neither side would. Freedom. He glanced at his crew. They had risked everything to make the TGR-47 into what it was. They had fought, bled, and nearly died to prove humanity's worth. And now they had a choice. Carter turned back to Catal and smirked. "Tell me more." The air in the briefing room was thick with tension. Captain Elias Carter sat at the head of the table, his fingers tapping idly against the metal surface as he studied the faces around him. His crew, his family, had been through hell together. They had taken a dying ship and turned it into something unstoppable. They had proven themselves against the Zenthar, humiliated them in battle, and in doing so had drawn the attention of the entire galaxy. And now they had a choice to make. Representative Catal of the Freestar Syndicate stood at the far end of the room, hands folded neatly behind his back. His expression was unreadable, those black, depthless eyes scanning the room, watching for reactions. "You're asking us to abandon the Union," Lieutenant Kowalski finally said, arms crossed. "To go rogue?" Catal tilted his head slightly. "It is a simplistic way of looking at it. I am offering you independence. The Union has never truly valued your species. They see you as an anomaly, a primitive race that stumbled into the stars by sheer accident. They will never give you the respect you deserve. You proved your worth in battle, and what did they do? They scolded you, ordered you to wait like obedient children while they decided how to handle the situation. Tell me, does that sound like an alliance built on respect?" Silence settled over the room. Carter exhaled slowly, leaning forward. "The Union is slow, bureaucratic, and half the time they don't know their own heads from their asses. But they've kept the galaxy from tearing itself apart. If we leave, if we join you, what does that mean for Earth?" Catal offered a small, knowing smile. "The Union would not risk an open conflict over one ship, no matter how famous you've become. They would spin a narrative, claim you acted independently, a rogue faction. The politicians will make speeches, but in the end they will do nothing. And Earth? Earth will continue as it always has. Humanity's place in the stars will not be dictated by a single government, Captain. But what you do now, that will shape the future." Carter felt the weight of the decision pressing against him. The TGR-47 wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a symbol, a warning, a legend in the making. Kowalski leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You know they won't stop, Cap. The Zenthar will come for us. The Union will leash us. If we stay in the system, we're just waiting for someone else to decide our fate." She was right. The Union was already treating them like a problem that needed solving, and the Zenthar weren't the kind of species to let a humiliation like this go unanswered. Carter looked around at his crew. Patel, their communications officer, chewing her lip nervously but nodding in agreement. Lieutenant Yora, their weapons expert, tapping his fingers against the table in impatience. Every single person in the room had fought for this ship, bled for it, and now they were being asked to fight for something even bigger. Freedom. Carter turned back to Catal. "And what do you get out of this? You're not just here out of the kindness of your heart." Catal's smile widened. "The Syndicate values strength, ingenuity, and those willing to push beyond the limitations imposed by fragile political alliances. We do not require obedience, Captain, only cooperation. You will have access to resources, repairs, intelligence, a network of allies who do not answer to the Union or the Zenthar. In return, we may ask for assistance from time to time. Nothing more." Carter let out a breath and ran a hand through his hair. "And if we say no?" "Then you remain under the Union's thumb, waiting for the day they decide to decommission your ship or strip you of command. And when the Zentaur come for their revenge, you will face them alone." Another long silence stretched between them. Finally, Carter nodded. "We're in." The decision was made. There was no turning back now. Keetal's expression didn't change, but Carter could tell he was pleased. "Then I suggest we leave immediately. The Union is monitoring this system. It will not be long before they move to contain you." Carter stood. "Kowalski, get the engines fired up. Patel, send out a coded message to the crew. Anyone who wants to leave, now's their chance. No hard feelings." Patel nodded, already moving. Joror cracked his knuckles and grinned. "Anyone who leaves after what we just did doesn't belong here anyway." Within the hour, the TGR-47 was fully operational. A few crew members chose to disembark, unwilling to cut ties with the Union, but the vast majority remained. They had built this ship from nothing. They had turned it into a legend. They weren't about to walk away now. The ship lifted off, thrusters roaring as it ascended into the blackness of space. Keetal had provided them with coordinates, a safe harbor where they could repair, rearm, and begin their new lives outside the Union's control. As they prepared for the jump, Patel's voice crackled over the comms. Captain, we've got a problem." Carter turned to the view screen, his stomach sinking as he saw what Patel had picked up on long-range sensors. "Union warships, a lot of them. They're moving to intercept," Patel continued. "We're being hailed." Carter exhaled sharply. "Patch it through." The screen flickered and Admiral Veclor's face appeared once again. This time, his expression wasn't just disapproving. It was cold. "Captain Carter," Veclor said, voice sharp as a blade. "Power down your engines and surrender your ship immediately." Carter crossed his arms. "Not gonna happen, Admiral. You have stolen Union property, engaged in unauthorized military action, and now you are attempting to flee into outlaw space. This is treason, Captain. I am ordering you to stand down." Carter smirked. "Funny, when we saved that outpost, you didn't have a problem with us acting without authorization." Veclor's jaw tightened. "That ship does not belong to you." "Like hell it doesn't," Kowalski muttered under her breath. Carter tilted his head. "Let's cut through the bullshit, Admiral. You don't actually care about us breaking protocol. You're scared. The Union's scared. We took a piece of scrap and turned it into something better than anything you have. And now you're afraid of what we'll do next." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Last warning, Captain. Power down or we will open fire." Carter turned to Kowalski. "Are the engines ready?" "Ready and waiting," she confirmed. He turned back to the screen. "Well, Admiral, you do what you have to do." And then he cut the transmission. The Union ships adjusted their formations, preparing for an engagement. The TGR-47 was fast, but there were a lot of warships out there. If they fought, they wouldn't last. "Brace for evasive maneuvers," Carter ordered. "Prepare to jump on my mark." The Union warships opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, streaking toward them. But the TGR-47 was already gone. As soon as the weapons fired, the rust bucket vanished, its overclocked warp drive tearing a hole through space as it surged into the void, beyond the reach of the Union. The last thing Carter saw before the jump completed was the stunned face of Admiral Veclor, watching helplessly as the most dangerous ship in the galaxy slipped through his fingers. They weren't just running, they were free. The TGR-47 ripped through the void, the chaotic swirl of warp space streaming past its reinforced hull. Every crew member aboard held their breath, waiting for the moment when they'd drop back into real space, hoping, praying, that they wouldn't come out surrounded by Union warships ready to finish what the Zentaur had started. Carter stood at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the main display, his fingers tightening around the armrest of his chair. The rust bucket had done the impossible before. But this? Escaping a full Union blockade, running blind into uncharted space with a warp drive that had been patched together with salvaged components and human ingenuity? This was pushing their luck to the absolute limit. "Headed to emergence?" Carter asked. Kowalski, her face lit by the harsh glow of her console, glanced at the readings. 30 seconds. Hold on to something." Carter took a deep breath. They had no idea what was waiting for them on the other side. Ketal's coordinates had been their only lead, a supposed safe harbor far beyond Union-controlled space, in the lawless regions known as the Drift. A place where criminals, mercenaries, and warlords operated beyond the grasp of the Galaxy's governments. It was exactly the kind of place they needed to be. The ship shuddered violently, a final lurch as the warp field collapsed, and suddenly they were there. Real space reasserted itself with a hard jolt. The stars snapped into clarity, and the swirling madness of warp was replaced with an endless black void dotted with distant pinpricks of light. The bridge filled with the hum of recalibrating systems, the flickering readouts stabilizing one by one. "Status report," Carter called. "Reactor output steady," Kowalski confirmed, her fingers flying over the controls. "Shields at 60%, engines running a little hot but manageable. We're in one piece." Patel was already scanning the area, her hands tight around the controls. "No Union ships on sensors, no immediate threats. Looks like we're clear." Carter exhaled. They'd made it. But they weren't alone. Captain?" Patel hesitated. "You might want to see this." She tapped a command and the view screen flickered, zooming in on a massive structure floating in the darkness ahead. A station. But not just any station. It was huge, a sprawling patchwork of industrial scaffolding, docking bays, and weapon emplacements, its hull covered in mismatched plating from 100 different civilizations. Lights blinked across its surface, and ships of all shapes and sizes buzzed around it like flies circling a carcass. It was a free port, a black market haven, a place where warlords, pirates, and outcasts came to do business. Ketal had sent them to a den of criminals. Carter smirked. "I think I like this guy." Patel's console chimed. "We're being hailed." "What it through?" The screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. A grizzled, scarred figure with mechanical implants running along the side of his head. His skin was a deep, mottled gray, his one organic eye glaring at them while the other glowed a menacing red. He was clearly some kind of station authority. "Unregistered vessel, you are entering Eban Reach. Transmit ID codes or turn around." Carter leaned forward. "This is Captain Elias Carter of the TGR-47. We were sent here by Representative Ketal." The alien's mechanical eye whirred slightly, analyzing. Then he grunted. "Kale vouches for you, so you're clear to dock. But understand this. Eban Reach has rules. You break them, you die. Understood?" Carter smiled. Crystal clear. The transmission cut off, and Patel let out a low whistle. "Friendly place." "Exactly the kind of place we need," Kowalski said, cracking her knuckles. "We need repairs, supplies, and new contacts. We're not in Union space anymore. We can't rely on anyone but ourselves." Carter nodded. "Then let's get to work."